Here's how White House Press Secretary Jay Carney feels about this week's 3 scandals. Carney last night said, quote, "You're concocting scandals here that don't exist, especially with regard to the Benghazi affair," end quote. A new Gallup poll shows you just how far afield and out of touch Carney is. A majority of Americans feel quite differently, and strongly so. 74% of voters want the IRS scandal investigated further. 69% feel the same way about Benghazi. Congressman Mike Kelly spoke on behalf of a lot of Americans at today's House Ways and Means Committee on the IRS scandal. He gave the outgoing acting IRS commissioner a piece of his mind, and the result was a standing ovation.
If anybody to sit here today and listen to what you have to say, I am more concerned today than I was before. And the fact that you all can do just about anything you want to anybody, you know, you can put anybody out of business that you want anytime you want. And I got to tell you, you talked about you're a horribly run organization. If you're on the other side of the fence, you're not given that excuse. And when the IRS comes in, you're not allowed to be shoddy. You're not allowed to be run horribly. You're not allowed to make mistakes. You're not allowed to do one damn thing that doesn't come in compliance. If you do, you're held responsible right then. I just think the American people have seen what's going on right now in their government. This is absolutely an overreach, and this is an outrage for all America.
Mr. Griffin is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr.
A-Team author, columnist Jedediah Bila, former Clinton advisor Doug Schoen, and in Washington, D.C., senior writer at the Weekly Standard, Stephen Hayes, all Fox News contributors. Thank you all for being here. Sure. Jedediah, let's start first with Mike Kelly, the congressman. I have to tell you, I haven't seen a spontaneous response like that, applause, a standing ovation, in my career.
Yeah, because people were watching Miller have absolutely no answers to anything. I mean, it was stunning to me. I was watching from home, and he couldn't remember dates. He couldn't remember names. He couldn't remember why he didn't disclose certain information to the committee that he had in his hands about specifically which kinds of conservative groups were going to be targeted. So he went to this hearing, had no information, had complete disrespect for the people that were answering these questions. And I think this gentleman had had enough and had said, you know what, I am going to be the one tonight who's going to speak for the American people at home who are watching this and are outraged and disgusted, and good for him for doing that.
Stephen Hayes, Dave Camp, the chairman of the committee, saying that the arrogance was breathtaking on the part of particularly Stephen Miller. And I have to say it was palpable. I have never seen such obvious disdain for a committee, for the Congress of the United States. He talked as a man who, I don't know, it was embarrassing to watch. It was an insult to the American people and our system of government. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it was. I mean, look, I can't fault the guy for disdain for Congress. I mean, I share that disdain for Congress, broadly understood. But, I mean, you could see on his facial expressions, he didn't want to answer their very basic questions. And when it was pointed out to him, I'd say very inconveniently, that he had this information, he was asked about it, he chose not to provide the details of what the IRS was doing, what the IRS knew about what it was doing. When he was asked these questions and when he was pressed on this, he sort of smirked and said, well, look, I answered the questions you asked. He certainly withheld a lot of the truth in a way that I think is not going to look good for him going forward.
And he may well be prosecuted here. Because the issue of legality will not be determined by the Inspector General, who replied that in his judgment, what had transpired was legal, even though it was inappropriate and offensive. It's going to be interesting to see which way that goes, because if there is legal course of action after that performance by Miller, my guess is he's going to be vigorously prosecuted. Doug Schoen, at one point, Miller was apparently informed last year of the Inspector General report. There's a lot to come out here. What are your thoughts about where it leads now?
Well, I agree with the Congressman Kelly, who said there are more questions today than there were before. I thought Acting Director Miller was worried more about perjury than anything else. And I think that we need to find out, particularly, Lou, the answer to the question of when precisely was the Department of the Treasury informed, what were they informed of, And what did they do with the information?
We're going to find, I hope, a lot of things out. I want to take up now Benghazi. We're going to take a quick break before we turn to Benghazi, and I'm going to turn first, if I may, to Stephen Hayes, who's done an outstanding job of reporting the story to us. More with the A-Team in moments. Back with the A-Team, Steve, I want to turn to you. The Benghazi is widening. We now are seeing leaks coming out of the White House. I don't know if they're intentional or otherwise, but it's clear that much more will be on the president's back for all the mistakes that have been made in Benghazi.
Yeah, I think that's right. There was a very interesting story today by Cheryl Atkinson at CBS News, who's been doing a really first-rate job on this, covering it sort of from the very beginning. And she has a number of administration officials expressing regret about certain aspects of what happened in Benghazi and after Benghazi. And it's an interesting sort of change of tone from the administration on this, and I think it's not insignificant that they went to her to try to do this. I think they're trying to take a different tack in the hopes that people will kind of move past this if they express regret. The problem is there's so much that we still need to know. I mean, we still, even after going through these emails which left in tatters some of the claims of the White House, that the White House wasn't involved, the State Department wasn't involved, we still don't know who pushed the movie. How did that become the central part of the administration's story after the attack? It's an important question. There are lots of questions about what happened during the attack, too.
And if I may, I'm going to use this language, Jedediah, the lies about the amateur movie. That was a campaign of lies directed at the American people, indeed the world, because the president carried it to the General Assembly on September 25th.
Yes.
These emails, as Stephen has documented in his reporting, they not only contradict, in my judgment, this White House, proves them to be liars, objectively so.
That's true, and I think for most of the public, it was when the talking point manipulation was exposed that everyone sort of sat back and said, hold on a second. What Jay Carney has been telling us for a very long time isn't true. These weren't stylistic changes. These were significant omissions. These were significant changes. The State Department was involved. The White House was involved. Where was the president that night? How involved was he? Was he communicating with Secretary Clinton? Because Hicks gave testimony that he had communicated with Secretary Clinton. Did she then communicate with Obama? Why are we in the dark? I think that really changed the discussion and made the American people wake up and say, there's been a lot of deceit here, and now we want to find out the truth.
There is one guy we got to hear from. That's Tom Donilon, the National Security Advisor.
Yeah.
His name has been absent. And there's a good reason, because he was the point person, Jedediah, on September 11th, and he is a leaker par excellence, and he's kept his name out by leaking.
And in the modified limited hangout established so importantly, if you will, and regrettably by the Nixon administration, and Watergate is being practiced here by this administration. And in my judgment, you're the professional. It's rather clumsy the way they're doing it.
Yeah, Lou, there is not a direct nexus between what they're saying and what's coming out. It's almost, to me, like just the big lie technique. It's old news. He spoke of it. It's a sideshow. It's all politics. That doesn't answer the very real questions you're talking about.
Let me ask you all this. This president looks as if he's at sea. Speaking to the press here in the last two appearances, it's as if he doesn't know how to behave without a compliant and even complicit media. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's not used to being challenged. He's not used to tough questions. He figured that he would be able to say, well, this is the right politicizing this whole Benghazi thing, and it would just end there. He didn't realize that the press was going to step up, particularly with this Justice Department AP issue that came up, and we're going to say, hold on a second, we have some serious questions. So I think he feels challenged and uncomfortable.
Stephen?
Well, there was a big break, I think, with Benghazi, because as you pointed out, I mean, the things that Jay Carney was saying were just not true. And, you know, I think reporters who are inclined to give the president, give the White House the benefit of the doubt for, you know, these past many months, but really 4+ years, stopped and took stock of where they were and thought, geez, I was reporting this because Jay Carney told me this, and now it turns out that it's not true, and not true in an obvious and demonstrable way. I mean, it wasn't the case that the White House and the State Department made a singular adjustment. They rewrote the whole thing.
Doug, you get the last word here. It's about 30 seconds.
The Obama agenda effectively is dead, meaning the president may be adrift, as I've written this week. The buck does stop with him. but there's no focus on guns, immigration, economic policy, nothing, no matter how hard they try.
At this point, his credibility is so severely damaged. His character is so assailed here. Should anyone be following that agenda? We'll save that answer for next week. The answers will be coming fast and furious.